You may have seen this structure driving back from the Red Rock Scenic Loop and thought, what is that? This is the Red Rock Detention Basin, and it's the first line of defense for every house, business, and road below it. Welcome to the Flood Channel. I'm your host, Jessie Acuna. Red Rock is one of the oldest basins in the flood control system. When it was built in 1996, it was hard to imagine that someday 99 others would follow. Well, here we are, and this is how we got here. Detention basins come in many shapes and sizes. A large basin rises from the desert to protect Laughlin. Children play soccer in the Desert Breeze Basin. Some even have dog parks, golf courses, and hiking trails.
There were 46 detention basins in existence when I started at the district, so now we have 100, so we built 54 since I've been working there over the last 20 years, which I feel is a great achievement. We really had come a long way, and we've come a long way since then, and we have a little bit more to go. But I think all these basins, I think we're seeing the benefit of all these basins because the flow rates are more controlled through the Las Vegas Valley. We're seeing very large storm events and intense storms, but these basins are doing their job and protecting the people in Las Vegas and Clark County.
The first basins built are at the foothills to the Spring Mountains and Red Rock National Conservation Area. The Las Vegas Valley slopes downward, and rain in the mountains flows east to Lake Mead over rocky soil that doesn't absorb water.
So detention basins are flood control facilities. We use these all over Clark County. They're very cost-efficient flood control facilities. It doesn't cost too much to build these structures compared to like channels and storm drains. We use these to capture large amounts of flow that are generally coming out of the mountains and flowing down through the city. So we want to capture that water, hold that water for a while, and release it at a more controlled flow rate downstream so that it's less damaging to the structures downstream. These are designed to hold water. It can get to depths of 30 to 40 feet, and these basins can be as much as a mile long. They're very large structures, but we need them to be large so that they can handle the volume of runoff and rainfall that's coming into them.
The Kyle Canyon Basin stretches for a mile and is 50 yards across. In 2013, a major rainstorm sat over the fire-scarred landscape of Mount Charleston. Some areas received more than 6 inches of rain. The water entered this basin, filling it to 30 feet. If it weren't there, thousands of homes could have flooded.
A detention basin has what we call an embankment, which is a dam. It's a dam structure. So these are usually earthen, made out of earth fill, and so we build those up, and that holds back the water. So it's similar to like a Hoover Dam, but it's not made of concrete, but it does hold the water back. So we do put what we call spillways on top of those embankments. If you have water that flows over an earthen structure, it'll fail really quickly. It'll just erode out, and all the water will be released from behind the dam. We don't want that to happen. So what we do is prepare for that type of eventuality, and we build a spillway out of concrete so that water can overtop and safely pass over the dam without it failing.
The size of the basin depends on its location and the watershed draining into it. All 100 basins are built to handle storms that have just 1% chance of happening here.
Well, the 100-year design storm, it's really the 1% chance storm. It's a probability. So there's a 1% chance of in any given year that a 100-year storm will hit, a 100-year level design storm. We selected that storm. It's a nationwide standard. FEMA uses the same storm event for their flood maps, for example. We had to kind of choose between what storm was big enough that we're providing a lot of protection, but not too big that we're providing, that we're building facilities that are too big that for a storm that's so remote that it may never happen, versus a storm that's smaller and happens more often, but is not big enough and could be overwhelming the facility. So the 100-year storm is a great kind of middle of the road type of a storm event that we can design to. It's not too big, it's not too small, and it works well for our system.
Since the basins protect so much life and property, they are considered high-hazard dams and are inspected every year by the state to make sure they are maintained well.
All of our detention basins in Clark County are considered high hazard, and really what that means is that there's a lot of structures, life and property that downstream of these that are being protected by that dam structure. And so if it were to fail, we'd have a lot of losses in terms of infrastructure and possibly loss of life. And so that's why we call them high hazard. It has nothing to do with the maintenance of the structure. These structures are very well maintained by each of the public works entities in Clark County, and we provide them budget to do that work. So they're very well maintained. It's just the fact that could be a high capacity of loss downstream if one of these were to fail.
Basins can handle those 100-year storms, but they also have safety features in case a stronger storm occurs.
We can always have a storm event that's greater than our design storm, greater than the 100-year. And if that were to happen, flow could spill over the spillway and impact properties downstream. So we try to line facilities up downstream, the channels and what have you downstream, so that if that does happen, at least it'll have the possibility of conveying some of that flow through the community. But people should realize that live downstream of these detention basins that they're very safe for up to the 100-year. The detention basin will capture those flows and hold it. But if we get a storm greater than the 100-year, there is a potential that flows could overtop that spillway and go downstream and impact them. We've never had a spillway that has been put in use yet that flows have overtopped the spillway, which is great. We don't want that to happen. I hope it never happens, but I'm glad those spillways are there just in case they're needed.
One other major safety feature involves basins with parks and other recreation facilities. Each has warning signs, and they are each built in a way allowing someone to walk uphill and out when the water starts to come in.
We also have multi-use facilities. So we recognized years ago that we have a large number of detention basins. They take up a lot of land, and that land isn't used 95% of the year because these basins are dry almost all of the time. And so we recognize that it might be a good idea to put park amenities, for example, in the bottom of a detention basin. So we worked with Parks and Rec and came up with some criteria to build these multi-use type facilities. We do institute some requirements when we do multi-use. For example, if you're putting a soccer field in the bottom of a detention basin, we make them elevate that soccer field so when the water is running into the basin, it's filling up around the soccer field as opposed to on the soccer field, and it gives whoever might be playing there time to get out of the detention basin and get to a safe area. So if you are in one of these detention basins, usually if you're in a hole, you're in a detention basin. If you are in one of these detention basins and you see water coming in, make sure you get out as quick as you can.
Another multi-use basin is the Club at Sunrise Golf Course. Here, the Las Vegas Wash and Flamingo Wash converge. The area was consistently prone to flooding, but a major $100 million project, finished in 2016, increased capacity so much the flood zone was removed. This basin, like all others, was built through sales tax. Flood control is funded by 1/4 cent. One of our newest basins is finishing up work in Henderson. The Pittman North Detention Basin is being built by Fisher Sand and Gravel at a cost of $23 million. It will offer protection for the Las Vegas Raiders practice facility and for homes in the Inspirada neighborhood.
20 years ago, 100 basins seemed like it was a long way away, but we just methodically have been building these basins throughout the last 2 decades and getting them built in strategic locations, and we're seeing the benefits of that now. Every detention basin we build, every storm drain, every channel, no matter how big or how small, it's protecting somebody. There's someone that had an issue and now they no longer have an issue and they're more resilient to flooding. And whether that's just driving to work and having a road that you can drive down, or if you're actually having problems with your house being flooded, every project is solving someone's issues. And that's a great feeling to have all these projects coming online and doing their job. And people are starting to recognize that.
Detention basins help protect neighborhoods from flooding, but they also help protect the environment from keeping trash from flowing down to Lake Mead. The new Pittman North Detention Basin, coming online this summer, has a smaller catch basin within it to help protect water quality. Some of the valley's older basins have also been upgraded to include this feature.
It's simply a rock berm that surrounds the outlet that allows the water to slow down and pass through on an even slower basis. So when we have smaller storms that come through the Las Vegas Valley, typically that we get in the wintertime, those storms slow down behind those rock berms, and it allows those sediments and pollutants to fall through. And we actually have footage of oil and grease sitting on top of the water that is filtered out by these rock berms before it enters and leaves the basin.
Wastewater from your home is treated, but stormwater drains through a separate system from the streets of your neighborhood all the way to Lake Mead.
Because there is no treatment for the storm sewer system before it enters Lake Mead in the Las Vegas Wash, we've got to do something upstream of those water bodies in order to be able to capture those pollutants. And using these water quality features that we have allows us to be able to do that.
Angel Park in Summerlin and 2 basins in Henderson, Pioneer and Equestrian, already have water quality features. When new basins are built, the water quality feature is easier to add.
A lot of people ask, if the water isn't treated, why don't we implement a treatment system to be able to capture and treat that water before it goes into the Las Vegas Wash? And that's, in essence, what we're doing is capturing and treating that water before it goes into the Las Vegas Wash. As those pollutants come into these basins and they settle out before they leave, we can come back in with maintenance equipment and clean out those pollutants and dispose of them properly so that they're not entering the water sources. And those are the kinds of things that we can do. It's a lot more cost effective to do it on a large regional basis than it is to try to do it on a confined basis at the source. And all the water in the Las Vegas Valley drains to one location. Eventually, all that water picks up those pollutants in your neighborhoods and travels 10, 15, 30 miles to the Las Vegas Wash and into Lake Mead.
Lake Mead is full of life, a seemingly endless aquatic parade, attracting and sustaining busy desert creatures. It's one of the most diverse ecosystems in Nevada, with species found nowhere else on Earth. But every time soap suds run down your driveway, oil drips in the streets, fertilizer washes off your lawn, or random trash gets swept in our storm sewers, their home gets a little uglier. They get a little sicker. If we don't take simple steps to change our ways, soon you'll wonder where all our friends have gone. It's time to clean up our act, Southern Nevada. To get your home or business lake-friendly certified, visit belakefriendly.com.
On a hot, dry day like today, it's hard to imagine this bathtub filled with water. But that's already been happening this year, and flash flood season is just starting.
Our normal yearly precipitation at McCarran Airport is about 4.2 inches, and we've already received 4.6 inches this time of year. We're not quite near the record. The record through May is about 6.5 inches. But we're looking forward, and who knows what the monsoon will provide us. But the monsoon normally constitutes about half of our yearly precipitation, 2 to 2.5 inches. So if we see that, we'll still be well above normal. Actually, we've already seen that we've already passed the yearly total.
Flash flood season runs July through September and coincides with the shift in wind patterns called the monsoon. Normally, southern Nevada gets half of its annual rainfall in those months.
You know, this is an anomaly. We normally don't see quite this level of activity over this long period of time. But this is normally our time of year where, in May and June, where we tend to have the least amount of weather, where we're in this transition period between the winter and the summer, where we'll start to warm up, we won't have as much wind, and we usually don't get too much rain during May and June.
In February, strong thunderstorms led to flowing water in flood channels and resulted in several rescues. We also had a rare winter storm this year.
Well, you know, it's been a very active pattern, and you know, climate is really just an average of the weather over a long period of time. We're going to have years like this where we just have a very active weather pattern, and normally, certainly in the transition seasons in the spring and the fall, what we see is a lot of these storm systems will come through, and then we'll have periods of low pressure and periods of high pressure. And what we get is probably mostly an average of extremes. But what we're seeing this year is it's just been a very active, very persistent, very active pattern, and the storm track has been further south than it is normal this time of year and comes right through us.
Even though we've topped 4 inches of rain for the calendar year, we haven't broken any monthly records yet.
Our record year for precipitation in McCarran was 1941, which was 10.72 inches for the entire year. 1992 was also a very strong year. In that year, we had a lot of rain over this period of time in April and May, where to date they had 6.62 inches.
The rain we have had through the spring, coupled with good snowpack in the Rocky Mountains, has helped erase Nevada's drought.
2 years ago, you would have looked at our drought monitor and found us all under drought conditions in the entire southwest United States. With the great precipitation, with the large amounts of precipitation we've had over the 2017 winter and the snow melt, and 2018 was pretty near normal. 2019, we've seen all this rain and snow in the mountains that's run off, and we are now classified in the entire state of Nevada is classified without drought.
The Weather Service thinks this flash flood season could be a little hotter and a little wetter than normal.
Our monsoon, at least in Las Vegas, begins usually at the very, very end of June and the first week or two of July. And right now, we have no reason to think that that's going to be any different than normal. In fact, we're predicting warmer than normal temperatures for the summer, as well as perhaps above normal, near normal, or to above normal precipitation during the monsoon season.
Yep. Look, it's floating. The car's floating.
Oh my God, no, 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 I'm crying, stop.
Spillways are a feature that helps slow down water as it works its way into our flood control network. Here, water slinks down the steps. At our newest basin, number 100, the spillway is the star of the show. The West Horizon Ridge Detention Basin certainly earns its position as number 100. It was not your average construction project, and it's perched high above Henderson.
For this excavation, everything out here is extremely hard rock and caliche. So we came out with a blasting crew. We had to drill every day for about a month. We blasted twice a week. One of the interesting parts about this job is the blasting is within only a few hundred feet of homes, and something we pride ourselves in is not a single complaint during the entire operation.
The city of Henderson managed this project in a difficult spot.
Basically, why we have the detention basins here is because of the storm events we normally get. We can get a lot of water in a short period of time, which causes a lot of runoff. So the detention basins are designed to capture all that water and then slowly release it over time, so the facilities downstream don't get overwhelmed and can handle that water as it comes down.
Building the basin here made sense because it's in a natural wash. But getting the basin to fit here was a challenge given the tight corridors with utilities and homes nearby.
It is a very small area. We had some very large equipment in here as well. We had D11 dozers, which is the biggest dozers you'll see in town, down in here ripping this material. Everything was hauled with trucks or conveyor belts, since we couldn't bring in large hauling equipment.
Las Vegas Paving was the contractor on this $6.5 million project.
3, 2, 1, fire and haul.
Almost everything dug out or blasted out here was crushed and reused on site.
So before we started, we actually sent letters to everybody within range, especially in the general neighborhood. I even personally gave them my contact information. But when you're blasting this close to homes, the blasting contractor will send out, there is a certain distance required from the job, and they all receive letters. And then we hold a community meeting that anyone's invited to ask questions and voice their concerns. And the community was happy.
And if a big storm happens here, this basin can hold 32.5 million gallons of water.
So it's designed to hold 100 acre-feet. So basically, when you say 100 acre-feet, imagine 1 acre of property, 1 foot deep of water is considered 1 acre-feet. So we could hold, 100 acre-feet of water.
The basin has its function, but its form isn't too shabby.
To me, the spillway is one of the cooler features. It's approximately 2,000 cubic yards of concrete went in to finish it, and it's just a pretty impressive structure if anyone gets to see it.
So this is a concrete OG spillway, and at the bottom of it, there are chute blocks. So in the event of the 100-year storm event, the water would go over the crest, and then the release would be controlled to spread the water out, so that way it's not channelized in the natural conditions of the wash itself. By spreading the water out, the goal is to protect the properties downstream from being inundated.
Each of the blocks within the spillway had to be done by hand.
It's a very large crew of masons and carpenters. It's built in phases. First you do the floor, then you do the walls, and then we did the spillway and the baffle blocks. But it took months.
We had to do a lot of community outreach because of the blasting and the close proximity of the houses around us. That was challenging, but overall we ended up having relatively no complaints. It was done very well, and then the outreach worked and kept all the residents informed, and so they knew when we were blasting, and they were pretty happy with it.
One of the last things construction crews did here was paint the walls and floor of the basin to match the surroundings and make it more of a natural fit.
Yeah, it's great to be a part of something that protects life and property and provides aesthetic value.
It's nice to know we have 100 basins in Clark County to help keep us safe. To see just how well they perform, visit us at our website, regionalflood.org, or check out our socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Regional Flood.